Today is some fun stuff for the pano shooters out there or the pano curious. We'll talk about how and why you might want to use an advanced setup like this, when you don't need it, when you do need it, how to set it up, how to use it. Plus, I'll share some brand new free no parallax measurements for new camera bodies and lenses. So stick around, it's going to be fun. Okay, so what's on deck for today? I'm going to talk about some things that I think can be valuable to the most seasoned panorama photographer, as well as someone who's just started kind of considering it or just done a few handheld sort of simple panoramas. I get a ton of questions about the setup for this larger advanced multi-row or tilted panorama rig, and I'm going to talk about how I set it up, when I use it, when I don't use it, and I'll talk about both for the fluid heads that I love as well as ball heads. And a little spoiler alert, you're going to use it a lot less with a fluid head than with a ball head, but there are times when I use it with my fluid head as well. So I'll talk about how I set it up, how I use it, why, when. I'm putting out a whole new list of no parallax points for people that shoot the Z6, Z7, Z6 II, Z7 II, their native lenses, and the new 14 to 24 2.8. I've had a lot of requests for that. Also, if you have that list, and I updated a lens in there that I think I measured a little bit wrong when I gave that out free before. So I'll give you that link. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about a really killer little phone mount for anybody who wants to use their phone for more long exposure photography, or just have a really nice tool that lets you read your phone easier when you're using your hands for something else. So kind of a cool multi-use tool. All right, and again, as always, there's a chaptered time code on the bottom. If you just scroll along the bottom of the time code, you'll see it's chaptered out. You can see what part of the video you want to watch or rewatch. Links to everything I'm talking about, including that new Nodal or no parallax point measurement guide for the Nikon Z users, is in the video description, along with links to all the stuff that I'm talking about, affiliate links that help me out. Thanks for using those. And a table of contents with index time codes, so just click on whatever part of the video you want to watch. That's all in the video's main description. Just click on the title of the video or show more, depending on your platform. You'll get in there and you'll see all that stuff. All right, so let's jump in. Let's talk about why you would use one of these systems, and I'll talk about why I want to use it with a fluid head versus why I want to use it with a ball head, and why you sometimes don't need it. So, and then I'll show you how it sets up. So you've got a base rail here and a way to pan level beneath it. Some people are asking me, well, do I need a panning clamp below it? And I think generally not. I'll tell you why when we talk about setting this thing up and we talk about the ball head. If you have a fluid head, absolutely not. You know, I like the Manfrotto 500 AH with the Kirk bridge assembly. It just makes this whole process a little easier. And you've got a flat Arca rail here and then a vertical rail with a panning clamp. And that panning clamp will clamp the Nodal rail that your camera's mounted to. I'm using the Kirk LRP 3 adjustable Nodal rail that I kind of worked with them to design so that it works both for short lenses and long lenses without getting in the way when you're doing panoramas. And that's the rail that I'm using in that guide that you can download for free. You just clamp it in here at the panorama position for your given lens and focal length, and you can tilt this thing. Let's say you're sitting up on the edge of an escarpment. I've done a lot of panoramas up on the top of Mount St. Helens looking down its crater to the north. You can tilt so that you've got that crater rim and get in your nodal position because that rim's really close to you and you've got all the way out to Mount Rainier and infinity that you want to look like it's all in focus at the same time. And you pan level, so it's drawing a perfect row. Right? And if you want to do, if you've got clouds moving quickly through your scene, you can even do something like shoot the cloud, shoot the midground, shoot the foreground. If you're doing multi-row, shift to the right, shoot, 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 shift to the right, shoot, 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 shift to the right. That way, you're not doing a row with the cloud, and then it's hard to blend because those clouds are moving. If you just shoot in sort of a serpentine pattern, makes it really easy to do multi-row, makes it easy to look up at something and shoot a pano, and you're moving that tilted thing straight across, not in a big rainbow. We'll talk about that in a minute with ball heads and how that can get a little difficult to do with a ball head. And it's staying directly over your measured nodal axis. It's rotating through that no parallax point in your lens. It's tilting through that without moving forward or backward of the axis of rotation of the head. Now the beautiful thing with a fluid head is that it pans from beneath. You level this from beneath and every movement of the head stays level. So you don't have to worry about having a panning clamp at the top. You just clamp this rail in. Now the only time I'm really going to worry about this is if I've got something close in the foreground and something distant that I want to not have parallax. You know, if parallax is something you haven't heard of before, grab my ebook. It's cheap. I have an ebook on simple panoramas. It'll explain the process. And then if you want to go into complex panos like what we're talking about here, I have a whole course, Advanced Panoramas. It's not expensive. It's linked in the video's description. And it'll tell you everything that we're talking about. But I've had a lot of people ask me questions. And this channel is completely driven by what all of you want to know more about. And one of the most frequent panorama questions I get is, you know, how do I set up the advanced rail system? And I can't lay it out perfectly because everybody's system is going to be a little bit different and your head might be different. But for those of you who've adopted my fluid head system, this is the way to do it. You know, you just put that flat rail, the vertical rail, the panning clamp. You don't need any kind of a panning clamp down below because the head is panning level for you. You just use the head like it's a rock solid panning clamp. All right, so that done, let's talk about ball heads for a second. So now I've got my Acrotech GXP ball head here. And I'm going to suggest if you're going to do panoramas and you have a ball head and it has a panning mechanism down below the ball, I'd suggest you get a leveling adapter under your tripod. You know, if you've got a tripod with a center column like this, I replaced this Benrose tripod with a really short center column. And I put Kirk's really, really lightweight little leveling adapter in here, and then if you level your tripod head's base so that pan down below is perfectly level, whoop, now that's level, and then open up your tripod and take a look at with the Acrotech. It's easy because I got such a big beautiful bubble level right on that clamp. Now all of a sudden when I pan, I'm getting that same kind of level pan that I would get with the fluid head. Now I have to level twice. I got to level the clamp and I have to level the base of the tripod for that to happen. Alternatively, you can get a panning clamp for the top, but that's going to really throw you off if you want to pan anything but perfectly level. You know, the minute that you tilt the ball to get that thing level and if you want to tilt the camera down, it'll work with a system like this. I'll show you what I'm talking about in a minute. I'm getting the cart before the horse a little bit. This will work perfectly for this system. And if you had a panning clamp and you've got a setup like this for doing multi-row and complex panos, it'll work just fine to put a panning clamp on top of your ball head and just level that panning clamp. As long as where you're panning is level and you have the system, it's going to work just like I showed you it worked with the fluid head. Maybe not quite robust connection and everything, but it's working just fine. Where it really becomes different is when you're not working with a complex panorama. You don't have anything close in the foreground. You're shooting a beautiful mountain range and you're using a wide angle lens and nothing's closer than 10 feet away from you. You just want to bang out a pano and you're not so worried about having a perfect no parallax point measurement. You don't want to throw all this stuff on the tripod. Most of the time, I'm not putting this whole setup on my fluid head. And that's where the fluid head really comes in and shines. You know, when I'm using my fluid head, I'm usually using, well, I'm always using my nodal rail because that's how I get balanced on my fluid head. Let's just take this guy off for a second and talk about it here. And I'll show you how I assemble that in a second, but if I'm working with my fluid head, by contrast, and I've got my nodal rail in here to do that sort of, I use it to just get nice and balanced. I'll loosen my tilt and get to where the camera's nice and balanced, almost gimbal-like, and if I let go, it's not going to do any kind of flopping or anything. That's the beauty of using that kind of setup with this Kirk bridge assembly and the LRP3 rail. Now, all of a sudden, if I want to do a panorama and it's relatively level, even if it's complex, I can grab the document that I'm giving out for free to all of you guys and say, well, the 14 to 24 at 14 millimeters should be 147 millimeters, and I'll slide out to 147 millimeters and lock it. Now that's no longer balanced. If I let go, the fluid's gonna slow it down. It doesn't crash, but it is back heavy now. But it's set, and all I gotta do is flip to vertical, and boom, I'm set, lock my tilt. And as long as I'm not tilted too much, I'm gonna do a perfect panorama. Easy peasy. If it's a single row and it's relatively level, I don't have to get any other equipment out. I'm gonna be level because I'm leveled from beneath this head. If it's not a complex panorama, I'm not even gonna worry about that nodal adjustment, and I can actually tilt and do multi-row. Boom, it's all gonna be working level. No matter what I do, this head stays level. So I could shoot, tilt, shift, tilt, shoot, tilt, up, shoot, tilt, up, shift. I can do that work without having that whole thing. And I've had a lot of people ask that question. What is the need for that with this head? Well, if you're working in a situation where you do have close and far elements and you are worried about parallax, the minute that you tilt, you're tilting that lens out to the point where it's way out off of the measurement that you made for where the no parallax point is. You can no longer rely on not having parallax because you've shifted forward to the axis of rotation. You're shifting forward or you're shifting behind it. The lens is almost completely behind the axis of rotation now. You have to sort of stay balanced over that axis of rotation. That's where that three-dimensional multi-piece unit comes in. For a fluid head shooter, it's so simple to do panoramas as long as you're not terribly worried about parallax. Even if you are worried about parallax, you can just shift to your adjustment, and if it's single row and you're not very tilted, it's just fine. The minute you start really wanting to tilt and do multi-row and you've got close and far objects, that's when you jump into the bigger system. So let me show you how to set, and it's just more complicated with the ball head. The minute you start tipping with the ball head, you've got to be really, really sure that you're level beneath the head, you're level at the clamp. But the minute that you tilt a ball head here and decide you want to do a tilted panorama, you've got to make sure that that base unit is level, and then you can't as nearly as easily do that kind of perfect. You can't just tilt in isolation from your pan. It shifts around. The minute you loosen, the whole thing is floppy. So doing that kind of precise shoot, shoot, over, shoot, down, shoot, you're going to need that assembly with the vertical rail and the secondary vertical clamp in order to just be precise when you're doing your multi-row work. All right. And if you're going to tilt and you have a panning clamp atop your head, let me show you what happens there. So during the little break I just had, I flipped this ball head upside down. The GXP lets you pull the clamp off the top, mount the ball straight to your tripod or leveling adapter, and then mount the clamp to the panning base. So it becomes like a panning clamp where it can pan perfectly level. And I think a lot of people set up their tripods with a panning clamp up top, thinking, well, I can easily do panoramas as long as I have that level panning clamp and I level my panning clamp. Well, right now this panning clamp's level, and yes, indeed, it does a perfect level pan, just as if I were panning with my fluid head. The problem is when you loosen up and you want to tilt down to shoot that Mount St. Helens crater rim, and now all of a sudden when you pan, you're panning up to the sides. It's like a rainbow. As you pan, it's no longer level at all. You can't do that with this setup. You need to leave that pan down beneath, level the head below, level the clamp at the top, and then pan from below while you're tilted. And again, it's just really hard to do those adjustments for multi-row. So the ball head is a tool that is going to require you to use this kind of system for multi-row or tilted panoramas to be precise. All right, so I'm kicking the ball head, as much as I love that GXP, off to the side to talk about what I really, really like to use to capture panoramas. That's the fluid head. I think the fluid head is just an amazing tool for shooting long lenses and action photography, for shooting landscapes and stills where you just want to make precise adjustments and stay level no matter what you do, and also for panoramas. I want to talk a little bit about this setup, how you take these pieces that are linked in my advanced panorama setup and put them together to set up your panorama with the to set up your advanced panorama system. So you're going to have this base plate It's just an Arca rail. It's like just a rail. It's double. Usually a lot of them are double dovetailed. You're going to drop it in your clamp of your tripod. I'm advocating the fluid head, but you want to drop it in the clamp. Leave it so that the bubble level is on your left. There's a little bubble level usually on a good one of these. The ones I link have bubble levels on them. Then you're going to take the vertical rail that you have and mount. There's a vertical rail that has an Arca clamp so that it clamps onto that rail standing straight up vertical. And on the top of it, you want to mount a panning clamp. Here I have a Really Right Stuff levered panning clamp. And that's going to be vertical. That's what's going to let you tilt. And you want to use more than one screw. So I put one big screw right through the center, and then there's another screw coming in from the back that goes in and locks that so it can't move. Whatever panning clamp you have, whatever vertical rail, they shift, they vary. Even the same ones that I link often can be a little bit different. Really Right Stuff makes a bunch of different versions of this, but there should be a way that you can go down to your True Value hardware store, get the right screws, and put it together, and you're going to mount that so that it's flush. I put my finger up here, and I just make sure it's perfectly flush as I clamp it. That way it's consistent. I just make it right there on that edge. Boop. And then whatever camera you're using. So when you're setting this whole thing up, whether you're using your ball head or whether you're using your fluid head, you want to level the whole system. So right now I'm leveling my fluid head. This is what I love about this Leo Photo leveling adapter that I've got, this new one, because I can keep both hands on the head and just use a finger and tighten that wing. And then you want to make sure that you're leveling it up top too. That's where the little bubble level on that rail comes in, and you're going to lock it so that you can't tilt. So now everything you're doing, you're panning perfectly level on this base rail. This is going up perfectly vertical. And then you're going to take your, well, we've still got it attached to the camera right now, but your LRP3 rail or whatever nodal rail you have. You know, I'm going to go in at 147 degrees for my, or 147 millimeters for my Nikon 14 to 24 at 14 millimeters. Boop, lock that in place. There's a little knob to lock that tilt, but you see how that becomes your tilt. All of a sudden that panning clamp is tilting the camera. And then you're going to take the base part of your L bracket where you would normally set up for a landscape-oriented horizontal shot and clamp it into that nodal rail. Set to go. That's how it works. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do I get the camera centered? Well, today's mirrorless or live view cameras make that a cinch. Just simply flip your screen up. If you got a flip screen, use a step ladder. If you don't, or set up really low, and turn your camera pointed straight down, turn it on, have a look, and center your sensor. You know, you're seeing a readout of your sensor. Put your grid view on your display and just center that little screw that's holding your clamp down onto the top of your head. Just dial that center of that screw in. Boom, you'll know you're perfect. And then what I like to do is I'll either take a scribe and scribe a little mark on my horizontal rail, or I got a little piece of gaff tape here, and I also take a Sharpie and write. Mine's 35 millimeters is where I like to put it, so I've got a little 35 written here in Sharpie on it. So I put a piece of gaff tape, I'll mark it with a scribe. I don't care about marking it up. And then you're going to be set. Just remember that measurement, you set it up right there the next time, and you're good to go. So that's how you set up the multiple rail, multi-row system. They're not horrifically expensive. The most expensive part is the clamp. Really Right Stuff has the patent on that clamp and aggressively defends it. It's the best one out there. It's expensive, but it's worth it if you love to do this stuff. You know, again, there's nothing more simple than, you know, say you're working on a beautiful scene with the clouds moving by quickly and you want to capture, you know, 9 frames. Well, my suggestion if those clouds are moving fast is shoot the lower one, shoot the middle one, shoot the upper one, shift to the right. Shoot that one, shoot down, shoot that way, shift to the right. Shoot that one, shift that one, shoot that one, done. And that way, you know, you're not shooting a row that has the clouds in it and then another row where they've moved and then another row where maybe there's a little bit of the clouds. It's much easier to merge and have them look correct. basically that's it for the advanced pano setup. That's how I use it. Remember, I've got those no parallax measurements for both the Z6 and Z7, the Z6 and Z7 II, and the 14 to 24 2.8S. As I was measuring it, there might be a millimeter or a half millimeter difference between the Z6 II and the Z7 II, but it's so marginally different. I don't think you're going to have a problem with it. If you check these measurements and you think they're slightly off, let me know and I'll readjust. But to me, as I checked all the measurements, the only lens that seemed off was the 24 to 70, and it made me wonder if maybe I had a beer in the afternoon when I was doing that, or maybe I just wasn't seeing it quite right. I re-measured with both cameras, and I have new measurements in this downloaded PDF, so disregard the old ones for the 24 to 70. Everything else is the same, with the addition of the 14 to 24 S, and those will all work for the Z6 II, Z7 II, as well as the Z6 and Z7. You know, my suggestion is put it in Dropbox or Google Drive or your Apple Cloud, iCloud, and make it available as a local document. So all I have to do is flip in here. I have mine in Google Drive, and it's always on my phone, even if I'm not in cellular or Wi-Fi data range. So handy to have with you at all times. But again, you know, I'll tell you, more often than not, when I'm out in the field shooting panos, these pieces stay in my bag. I'm just not using them that much. That piece is always on my camera. The nodal rail is how I balance my fluid head system so that my camera doesn't flop, and then it's there if I want to do a pano. And you know, usually I'm not so worried that I can't do a little tilting and panning. The fluid head just kind of does it all. When I do need this, the way I keep it is I leave that panning clamp mounted on the vertical rail. I take the horizontal base rail, clamp it kind of tightly in there, loosen, put it together so that whole thing is sort of one piece, and I have a little f-stop bag, and it goes in my backpack just in case I need it. It's all in this one spot. So that being said, we were talking about having your phone with you with the things that you need out in the field, and you know, sometimes we might actually want to shoot with our phone. Let's pull the camera off here for a second. And this cool little phone holder folds up really, really small. It's a Leo Photo product. They sent it to me, and I thought, do I really need a phone mount? But then I started playing with it, and I realized it's actually extremely cool. So it has an Arca rail, or an Arca dovetail. You can clamp it right into any Arca clamp. And then your phone, it's just spring-loaded. It's got a nice heavy spring. You drop your phone in there. Multiple sizes will fit. And it tilts up and down, but it also rotates if you want to go vertical or horizontal. Boom, like that. But then the thing that I really, really like about it, the thing that I think is even more cool about it, is that you can take it off there, and the little Arca plate just splits in half. It's hinged. So when it goes together, it's an Arca plate. When it pulls apart, it's a stand. And while I'm having my coffee and eating my eggs in the morning, I can sit and work with my phone in either landscape or portrait, but I can be reading my email, working with both my hands. It just sits up nice. It's just a nice little stand to have. So I think it's a cool tool. It's a Leo Photo PS2. You know, if you've got a tabletop tripod, this is the Leo Photo, what is it? It's the MT-02. This has a cool little ball head, and it's got, you know, all of a sudden I do a lot of little shots or things on my desktop with either a camera. That this is just a really nice combination with that to hold your phone and do whatever kind of photography you want to do. I'll put links to both of these. This guy clicks into multiple positions like a big tripod would and folds up super, super small. So I'll put links to both these in the video description, as well as my advanced panorama course, these advanced panorama parts, and of course those no parallax measured points that I've got for the Z6, Z7, Z6 II, Z7 II. All right, everybody. So I want to thank everyone once again for hanging in here, for supporting this channel, for steering the content with your questions and comments, both in YouTube and to me personally via email. We're launching our long exposure project. We've got an awesome group of people doing that this week. Actually starts up tomorrow is our first group meeting. In 2 weeks, I can't remember exactly. Let me look at my calendar really fast. We're doing another office hours on February, I believe it's going to be like the 16th. Let me just check my calendar fast. February, it's always on Tuesdays. February 16th, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're having an office hours all about portraiture. We'll talk about environmental portraiture versus headshot portraiture. We'll talk about some lighting techniques. We'll talk about tripod versus handheld. Rapport with the model. We'll look through some of the great portrait work of the past century, different portrait artists that Rick LePage and I really look up to, and some of our own work at the same time. And we'll talk and take your questions about all things photographic, but in particular portraiture. So sign up for that at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. I'm going to have a major update on workshops really soon. I'm getting ready to launch Yellowstone, the Tetons, and Moab in October 2021. Cuba is slotted, ready to go. There's like 1 or 2 slots left in the second Cuba workshop in November. That's in between Halloween and Thanksgiving. You'd be home for Thanksgiving. And Costa Rica, we've actually moved to 2022. Anybody that was excited about that? It's just a little too close in the summer when it's going to be great there with the virus and everything else. So we're pushing it out to 2022 to keep everyone safe. I don't want to endanger anyone. There's also a Southern Oregon Coast workshop coming very soon. So more details on all that stuff. If you want to sign up for Cuba or for the big parks workshops, just hit me up. And there's actual signups online for Cuba. I'll put that in the video's description as well. All right, everybody. I hope everyone is staying safe, having fun, being creative. And I hope I'll see you in office hours on the 16th. And thanks so much for all the comments, questions, and feedback. That's what drives the content here, and it makes it a joy to produce this stuff for you guys. All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you next week.